With the best brand of football in Idaho, this is the 8-Man Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
That's right. Welcome in. Another edition of the Idaho 8-Man Prepcast on IdahoSports.com, talking about the best game there is, 8-man football in the Gem State, week in, week out. My name is Brandon Bainey, joined as always by Will Henneke at Idaho 8-Man on Twitter. Hey, Will.
Back in the kitchen for another week. It worked well last week, so I figured let's do it again.
Yeah, and I'm back at my home after being on the road in Idaho Falls last week. And, of course, we've got the old ball coach on with us, Coach Lane Kirkland from Cary High School as well. Lane, good to see you.
Yeah, going to be a good night to talk about 8-man football. What do we got?
Yes, well, we have got a lot to get to, but as always, we start off each episode of the Prepcast with our game of the week. Now, this is from the previous week. It's the best overall game, not necessarily in terms of implications or storylines, but just what was the best, most exciting contest. Second time this year, the Deary Mustangs are featured. This time, though, they're on the wrong side of it, Will. They get into a shootout with Lakeside. These are both D2 programs, but in different districts. Mm-hmm. And basically, Lakeside scores with 1:15 to play. Quincy Hall scores to give Lakeside a 42-34 lead. And then Deary's got the ball one final time, and they're driving and ultimately get stopped on fourth down. And the Knights pull out a wild one, 42-34. But this was a back-and-forth affair.
Yeah, they've played some fun football games up there. And you mentioned Quincy Hall with the big touchdown for Lakeside. I mean, here's a young man. It feels like he's been playing there forever. But that's because he continually does good things for the Knights. And in 3 games, he's 460 yards rushing and 6 touchdowns. You want to talk about, and I will mention this over the course of the night. I'm not a big fan of preseason rankings because basically we're guessing. But I think we're getting to the point where we kind of have an idea of where the Leopard spots are, if you will. And some kids are starting to build their all-state applications and resumes and whatnot, and Quincy Hall's one of them. He's been a great playmaker for them so far this year.
Yeah, Coach, the old cliche as well. Whoever has got the ball last is going to score. That wasn't necessarily, or whoever's got the ball last is going to win the game. That wasn't necessarily the case here with Deary. They got turned over on fourth down.
Well, defense wins games too sometimes. So yeah, and not too a high-scoring affair either. It looks like a defensive battle. So a good competition up north to kick off the season there for those guys. And Deary once again giving their best, but coming up short.
Yeah, they've done a nice job. They're playing with their number 2 quarterback. Nolan Hubbard was not the kid they expected to be the quarterback when the season began. Wyatt Vincent, the junior, lost over the summer to an injury, and here's a young man. Coach, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. You can either use injuries as a crutch, or you can use them as an opportunity to somebody to step in and make something happen, and it's happening in Deary. This young man's doing a great job, and this is a team that really has a chance to compete for a playoff spot in the 1A Division II classification.
Yeah, fun to see those kids rise and somebody to fill that spot. Good for the Deary Mustangs.
Yeah, Hubbard had 126 yards passing, 3 touchdowns. Tucker Ashmead and Dawson Bovard scored on the ground for Deary as well. And Lakeside's quarterback, Liam Hendricks, rushed for a pair of touchdowns. And, of course, Quincy Hall, 190 yards at 3 touchdowns on the ground for Lakeside. Getting it done. That was our game of the week. So let's just stay up north, fellas. And in the North Star League, that's where Lakeside plays. We had a really good game between Clark Fork and Wallace as well. I was debating whether this should be our game of the week. It was a 20-14 win for the Wampus Cats, Will. We're not used to seeing games, Coach Kirkland said, boy, 42-34, that's kind of low scoring. Well, this is really low scoring.
Yeah, you get some of those people around, around the field up there, and you're used to seeing, 50-40 type games, and it's 20-14, and you're wondering where the heck the offense is. But I guarantee you both coaching staffs are just over the moon at how their defense is played. And if you can play defense in 8-man, if you can get some stops, you're always going to give yourself a chance. And, I think both coaching staffs up there, both, Coach Young and his staff at Wallace and the new staff at Clark Fork have got to be really, really happy with how their defense has performed.
Yeah, Pat Young in his first year coaching Clark Fork High. He is a former player for the Wampus Cats. Chase San Roman rushes for 165 yards and a touchdown. Dylan Ryan Downing gets 2 rushing scores, and that's your difference, 20-14 the win. This is what was the lowest scoring game you were ever a part of, Coach Kirkland?
Well, it was actually last week in junior high. I'm the junior high coach, and it was 0-0 after 4. And we went to overtime, and we won 8-6. But
somebody take the air out of the ball.
What's that?
Somebody take the air out of the ball or something?
It was slow motion, man. It was slow motion, but it happens. But I guess last year, Grace 7-0. That's the lowest scoring it could be.
Yes, and that was what came to my mind immediately was that game with Grace last year. It seems like we revisit that a lot here on the Prepcast, Coach. I don't mean to, but
he's mad about it too.
It's over.
Yeah, so Clark Fork gets the win. So now the Wampus Cats are 2-1 in the North Star League. They're 2-1 overall as well. Wallace is 1-2 in league. Wallace, we talked about, really young team with a lot of freshmen this year, kind of taking their lumps, but they've been pretty competitive. This entire league, I think, Will, is really fascinating between Mullins St. Regis, who defeated Kootenai 62-30. Kofi Apia returned a punt, 45 yards for a touchdown, among the highlights. So Mullins St. Regis stays undefeated. They're 2-0 in league. But between Mullins St. Regis and Clark Fork and Lakeside and Wallace, I mean, I think any of the 4 are capable of pushing any of the other 4 on any given night.
Right. You don't have the thing that Mullins St. Regis had going for a long time, whether it was Adam Ball or Caleb Ball or any of the, I mean, they just had such a slew of playmakers going there for a while. You go all the way back to, Sky Galloway and the Trogdons, all the Trogdons. They had a big pony every year. This year, they don't really have that. What they have is they have 3 or 4 players, Kofi Apia being one of them, who are capable of making big plays, and they're finding out who's going to be that guy, who's going to be that home run guy. So maybe they've come back to the pack just a tiny little bit, but both Clark Fork and Wallace and Lakeside too, they've shown that they're going to be able to compete. So that's going to be an interesting race as we get into October, and a lot of those teams see each other 2 times from a scheduling standpoint. So seeing, when some of these guys see each other for that second time, who makes the adjustment, who makes the change, and then who makes the plays. But I think you're right. I don't know that you can just write anybody in ink just yet coming out of that district for a playoff spot.
Yeah, I was going to ask what you thought about that, Coach Kirkland, where it's a league of 5. You have 4 conference opponents, and because it's so hard to find other teams to play up north, they all just said, well, we'll just play each other twice, and it'll all count towards the league standings. What do you think about that? The opportunity for example, Clark Fork lost to Mullins St. Regis 20-6 earlier this year, fumbled twice inside the 10-yard line. So they're thinking, we can't wait to see these guys again. Well, you get it with this kind of round-robin double schedule.
Yeah. Do both games count, or the first or the last count, or are they? How is that?
They both count in the league standings.
Well, it's going to come down to coaching and who's the healthiest in the end and who's grown the most, and that will make for some great competition, especially those second games coming back around. And if kids can stay mentally tough and keep fighting and feel they all have a chance, which it looks like they do, it's going to be competitive ball.
Yeah, it's just an interesting scheduling quirk up there in the North Star League. And we will talk more about a big matchup we've got from the North Star League on IdahoSports.com this Friday night when we start previewing the upcoming slate of games. Let's stay in North Idaho, though. Let's go over to the Whitepine League 1A D2. Timberline picked up a Thursday night win over Wilder last week, 30-8. This was a game, Will, that was called at halftime because Wilder, the injuries were just piling up, and they looked at the scoreboard and said, we're good with calling it here. And Timberline agreed. And you hate to see that happen. Wilder has been very banged up this year.
Yeah, they're decimated right now. Coach Bailey and his kids, they're working their butts off to try and just, put a good product on the field. And they've got some kids that can really play ball if they can ever get them all together. And that's been That's been their problem this year. And over on that other sideline with Timberline, this is a team that for a couple of years, Rylan West, it was, you hitched your wagons to that young man, and it usually good things would happen because he was just such a battering ram of a fullback. Well, now he's out with an injury, and what they've done, or at least what it looks like they've done, at least what they did on Thursday that I really liked, they shifted the game plan a little bit. They didn't ask somebody to try and duplicate Rylan West. They said, we don't have another Rylan West, so we're going to take our quarterback, who's a heck of an athlete, Corbin Christopherson, and we're going to have him wing it around a little bit. He threw 10, 12 passes in the first half. I'm sure there have been plenty of games over the last couple of years where they didn't throw the ball anywhere near 10 or 12 times, but it worked for him. He was accurate, he was efficient, and he got some points on the board for him, and it'll be interesting to see if they stick with it going forward in their league.
Yeah, Corbin Christopherson was 8 of 10 for 209 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's not bad in one half of work. And ironically, Wilder actually scored first in this game. Noe Anguiano scored on a 4-yard touchdown run, and then Timberline put up 30 in a row after that. There is a balance you have to have, Coach Kirkland, right? Generally speaking, in Idaho 8-man football, a lot of teams run the rock, and that makes sense. But you have to have at least some semblance of a passing game. Otherwise, it becomes really hard the deeper you get into the postseason, right?
Correct. You need to have that balance there and additional weaponry and either spreading the field or good play action to get that 5-yard pass out and see what you can make of it after that. It always keeps people guessing, and that's important to have in your arsenal. And
we're starting to see other teams that are skewing way more towards the pass. I think of Lighthouse Christian and Logos in particular, a couple of teams we'll talk about here coming up. But a good win for Timberline, their first win of the year. They're now 1-2 on the season. Let's go up to the 1A D1 Whitepine League now, where message sent. Logos is for real. They took Camas, the defending league champions, and dismantled them 40-14 the final. Jack Driscoll, 413 yards of total offense, 3 touchdowns passing, 2 touchdowns rushing. And really, I think the story that's getting buried here, Will, is Logos's defense is really, really good.
Oh yeah, they've been terrific. They haven't, and I had it written down on a different piece of paper. I don't have it on the piece of paper here next to me, but their cumulative score, they've only given up something like 22 points in 3 games. And, you don't need a great offense if you're only giving up 1 or 2 touchdowns per game. But the thing is, they got a pretty great offense. We talked about players who are starting to author some resumes for all-state consideration. Jack Driscoll is certainly one of them, the senior quarterback who's been leading that team ever since they became a varsity team. And they've got, 30 kids. And for the most part, almost all of them have been in Logos from the get-go. So this is a group that has grown together to get where we're at now. And, right now, Camas is a good football team. They're a really good football team. And Logos, I'm sure the coaches wouldn't say it was easy, but the score was they won comfortably. And that is something that is going to have a lot of people down around where Coach Kirkland lives looking around going, maybe we need to, instead of just like, let's pencil in Prairie and let's write in some of these traditional teams, maybe we need to make sure we're keeping an eye on this Logos group.
Yeah. That's interesting stand that they took this week, and a great big statement, and says that something's going on there. They got the kids to make it happen and the camaraderie to follow through with it in beating Camas. That's a big win.
Yeah, huge statement delivered by Logos, and they are 2-0 in the Whitepine League, 3-0 overall. They are currently sharing first place. Let's see, your leaders in the Whitepine League are, as I check my notes, Logos and Potlatch. That's what we all had in the preseason, right, Will?
Yeah, of course, yeah. And these 2 teams play in a couple of weeks, and I don't. Anything can happen any given Friday. I'm giving all my reverence to that, but I think it's very possible that both these teams, they don't taste defeat between now and then, and they play in a couple of weeks. And really interesting matchup. Potlatch is incredibly well coached. Logos, I can't say they're not well coached because they just keep getting better and better and better, and they're just such an explosive, dynamic team. It's if that's what you had on your bingo card coming into the season, that it was going to be Logos Potlatch at the end of September for the driver's seat in the 1A Division I Whitepine, if you took that to a casino and put down $5 on it, you would have made a little money, I think.
Yeah, Coach Kirkland, Logos is only in their third year of varsity football at the high school level, but they've been playing football longer than that. I think it goes back 5 years. They actually started with a junior high program first, before there was even a high school program. They took this group of kids and said, okay, if we're really going to do this and be serious about building a football program, we have to build it from the ground up. And so they started with junior high only, and now those kids are in high school and doing amazing things. I thought that was a good way to build up the program for a school that's trying football for the first time.
Perfect. Yeah, perfect. You start them young, you keep that group together, you add to it here and there, you improve in your coaching, and your kids get better and they work at it. And all of a sudden you're on the map, and you're on everybody's on high alert for the new kids on the block. So congratulations to Logos. I know they're excel in track and basketball, and it looks like they're doing the same here. So
yeah, I got to go to Logos a couple of weeks ago, and they said, hey, we're known as a basketball and a running school, and we want to be known for more things than that. And they're definitely on the right track. So Potlatch is the other team that's currently undefeated in Whitepine League play. I'll be honest, guys, last week I picked Prairie to win this game, and that didn't happen. So I'm here to wear it and own it. Potlatch runs away with a 50-8 win. I'm not surprised that Potlatch won, but the margin of victory, Will, was pretty significant, I thought.
It was. And I'm same as you. I believe I picked Prairie to win that game as well. So we're both eating crow here this week. And, Coach Ryan Ball, great job there with that program. Him and his staff and his kids, they just compete. They don't always have the biggest, numbers, but they show up and they go out there and they battle every week, and they're rarely a pushover. And Jack Clark, a tremendous game this past weekend for Potlatch, and they've put themselves in a good spot. They've put themselves in a really good spot going forward to potentially be playing, really meaningful football in November.
Yeah, what was more impressive here to you, Coach Kirkland? Jack Clark for Potlatch, he had 3 touchdowns on the ground and 2 touchdowns passing. Was that more impressive, or was it his play on defense? He had 2 interceptions on the defensive side of the ball as well. What was more impressive to you?
Well, he probably converted those 2 interceptions into scores, so I'd have to go with the offense on that one, and credit those guys. Credit him for that. So get the ball back and go score again. 50 points is pretty good.
Yes. Tanner Garrels also came away with an interception for Potlatch, and he actually returned his for a touchdown as well. So Potlatch had 3 takeaways in total on defense. And Prairie scored on a 33-yard touchdown pass from Noah Beeler to Levi Gehring. And the nice thing about the Whitepine League is there's always an opportunity awaiting to get right. And so good luck to the Pirates as they try to do that. Let's go to your neck of the woods, Coach Kirkland, District 4, the 1A D1 Snake River Conference, where Oakley, after getting knocked around by Kendrick a little bit, I think they took the field with a renewed focus and energy in a 76-38 win over Murtaugh. Coach, this was a really impressive performance.
Yeah, probably made him feel a lot better to put up that many points and to get rolling in the conference and kind of get back on schedule with things there. It's a good start for them as they head into conference play now, and to just get the ball rolling again and get comfortable and fix things that weren't quite right the week before, and really took it to a Murtaugh team who put up quite a few points, but 76 is hard to compete with.
Yeah, Will, I had to laugh about it. I'm like, if you're Murtaugh, you're like, hey, we put up 38 points. That's going to win us a lot of games. And then you look and you're like, man, 76 is like double what 38 is. It's tough to compete with.
Not only did they put up a decent number of points, they had 2 runners run for over 170 yards. Junior Benitez and Sawyer Young, both over 170 yards. You got to feel like as a coach, if you can have 2 runners go over 170, you're going to have a pretty good chance. And they lose the game by 38 points. The thing that really struck to me, and Coach, I'd love to hear your opinion on this. Oakley, I think the perception on Oakley is they're going to just kind of bang you down. Kyler Robinson threw for 356 yards, I know that in the past they've thrown the ball and they've had explosive receivers, Jake Pulsifer and others come to mind over the years. But I mean, if this is a team that can wing it all over the field and you still have to defend for the Bryce Severes, who's still there, that's going to make Oakley a real handful.
Well, he probably had a little more time this week to get the ball off and probably practice a little more on getting rid of it sooner as well. And with guys like Bridger Duncan and Isaac Cranny catching the ball in company, those are going to be some serious weapons if you're keying on Severe. And that was a great way to attack with the pass. That's a lot of yards.
Yeah, and Cooper Beck, too. He went from playing center to playing tight end, and he's just picked it up naturally. Sometimes it's hard for those O-linemen to all of a sudden be running routes downfield, but Cooper Beck also has played really well this year for Oakley also. And, yeah, Murtaugh, I think they're going to be fine. At least they got Oakley out of the way. They can now worry about the rest of their league schedules. Speaking
and
of
survived.
Yes. Was it the Oakley game that he got injured in last year? I knew it was early, but yeah, that's great to see Junior Benitez running the rock like he does so well for Murtaugh. Another team, Will, that's really slinging the ball around the yard is Lighthouse Christian. They had no problems with Raft River, a 40-12 victory. Justice Schrader, 389 yards, 5 touchdowns. We're kind of used to seeing that from him, but man, this was another statement win for the Lions.
It's becoming just another day for that young man. He's headed up to the University of Montana to watch the Grizzlies play this weekend on a, one of those invitations. I believe it goes under the classification as an unofficial visit, but hey, we want you here. And, I don't know that the Big Sky has gone mining for quarterbacks too often in the Twin Falls area. So that tells you something right there. And, he's got a host of good players around him, but that young man just continues to produce and Lighthouse Christian, when they face Oakley, especially if Kyler Robinson is, turning into Aaron Rodgers 2.0, you want to talk about a game that could be a lot of fun to watching those two just wing it back and forth up and down the field. I might buy a bag of popcorn and just go in and watch that one.
Yeah. He played more than 4 snaps, so he's already better than Aaron Rodgers. So
there you go. Maybe not my best example.
This was a big victory for Lighthouse Christian. And that's cool. Justice Schrader going up to UM. That's where I grew up. I'm a diehard Montana Grizzly fan. So let's do it, guys. Let's get him signed. Let's do this thing. That would be awesome. Where does Raft River go from here, Coach? They're 0-1 in league. They're 1-1 overall. Not the way you want to start the conference, but plenty of opportunities here to right the ship.
Right. That game was a little closer than it appeared. In the mirror at half, I believe Lighthouse scored to go up 22-12 or something like that. I have that game filmed because we're playing Lighthouse this week and watch that. But I think they're okay. I saw some good skill players in Raft River taking care of the ball and doing some good things against a talented Lighthouse team. I just think they ran into a ship that's rolling pretty strong in the wind with the ball getting slung around there. But I think they'll be okay as they still continue to head into conference play. Yeah,
well, we'll keep an eye on Raft River certainly, but we're just used to penciling them in at least into the quarterfinals and beyond. So we'll see what Coach Chad Evans and company can do this week. We talked about this game last week, guys. The battle for the Stanley Trophy between Valley and Glens Ferry. Valley gets the win 56-42, kind of a shootout. Josh Hardy was slinging the ball all over. Pedro Robles was making plays everywhere. Drake Jones played really well. He had an interception on defense. And they basically Valley built up a 21-0 lead early. And then from there, the two sides kind of traded scores. But because Valley was able to bankroll those points early, they were able to sustain the win.
They did a nice job getting out in front, and Coach Ayers and his staff have done a nice job, getting reacclimated to the 8-man game after a couple of down years in the 2A, and they've got a good group there, and they're playing themselves into that playoff position as well. When you're talking about the number of at-large bids available, Valley plays Murtaugh. I think it's this week, if I'm not mistaken, and that's a game where the winner of that matchup probably puts themselves in pretty good position to be an at-large team if they're not able to go win the conference, and they put themselves, the winner puts themselves in a pretty good spot. But specific to this game, you mentioned Josh Hardy. Kid's he's a lot like his brother. He's not really big. He's just a good football player. And then on the other side, a name to keep in mind for Glens Ferry, Josiah Valencia, averaging 10 tackles a game at linebacker, and then he's running the ball for 75 yards a game at fullback. And you got to get it done. You got to have kids that can get it done on both sides of the football if you want to succeed in the 8-man game. And Glens Ferry has a couple of those kids. They just need a little bit more experience and just physically get a little bit bigger. But they got some kids in Glens Ferry for sure.
Yeah, Glens Ferry took 7th place last year in a 7-team conference. Coach, you tell me if I'm wrong, but I think Glens Ferry could go to a lot of other conferences and finish, second, maybe even first. They just play in such a difficult league. They do, and they have a difficult schedule. I think they're going to improve this year. That looked like a good game for them, competitive game. And like you say, those 21 points come early. Sometimes you rely on those in games like that maybe equal the start. That Valley was able to survive in that. And those young kids are growing up and getting better. And you can't count out Glens Ferry. I think they'll continue to grow as well and improve throughout the season. Yeah. So we talked about the Stanley Trophy and what it means to the two communities on our Magic Valley Prepcast that I do every week with Scott Burton, where we talk about just District 4 athletics. Scott was able to get a picture of the Stanley Trophy. So nice. Here I'm gonna put it up on the screen. It's gonna lop off all of our faces, but you'll see the
best part of the podcast.
Right. Tell me what you guys think about this trophy. I think it's pretty cool.
Oh yeah, that's great.
Wow. What do you think, Coach?
That's pretty special. Yeah, good looking one right there.
Yeah, but it's got all the results from the previous years. It's got a little inspirational message, promoting good sportsmanship. And so, yeah, Valley gets to hang on to the Stanley Trophy for another year, but that trophy is humongous. I like that. That's a trophy right there. That's what they should give out at state instead of the little blue plaque, right?
Well, they like the banners, right? Coach, you like those banners?
The banners are nice. Yeah, white ones are pretty. that looks like a heavy trophy. The heavier, the better.
That's right. So congratulations to Valley for retaining the Stanley Trophy. Okay, let's stay in District 4, but go to the 1A D2 level. This was a game we had on IdahoSports.com, gentlemen. I went back and watched this game. Butte County and Camas County really close for a half, and then in the second half, Butte County shuts out Camas County 22-0. That just doesn't happen a lot to the Mushers, Coach. I was very surprised to see that.
Yeah, Sam must have made some great changes at halftime, and I know his kids are very motivated and weren't going to let that happen on their home field there. I'm sure they have some goals with that home field to protect the house there. And it came out slinging, and Brody Westergaard just going crazy, getting some good blocking going. And I see some film on him. He's a great runner. He hits the hole hard, and he just keeps gaining for yards, and his blockers are amazing.
Yeah, Westergaard was our IdahoSports.com player of the game, 161 yards rushing, 3 touchdowns, had a sack on defense as well. But we talked about this, Will. Butte County, it's not just one guy. It's Brody Westergaard and Rawson Twitchell and Razor Duke. I mean, they've just got numerous playmakers.
Yeah, and Coach, you could break this down way better than I could, but they do what they do, and it's almost like they don't even care if they're just going to continue to do it. They're just going to do that thing. And Coach, Sam over there, Coach Thorngren, does such a nice job always having somebody ready to step up. And it helps when you got, 30 kids out there on the field, to have a little bit of depth there. But there never seems to be much of a drop from year to year. Every year they got somebody that's ready to slide right in and produce. And we talked about kids that are starting to build that all-state resume. Brody Westergaard's got to be one of them. And Butte County's got to be a team that, if you're talking about teams that have a chance to be one of the last ones standing, it's them. They're averaging 51 points a game. They really have a chance to, with Water Springs and Council the next 2 weeks, and then they have a meet in the middle game against Kendrick 3 weeks from now here in the Valley, here in the Boise area. I believe that game's being played in Homedale, if I'm not mistaken. But they really have a chance to get themselves in a good position to really do some damage in November and be one of those last teams standing.
And Camas was a good game for them, a good challenge. They need those games early on to make those adjustments. And obviously 22-0 second half, adjustments made, adjustments done.
Yeah, Camas County led at halftime 28-24, and then the wheels kind of fell off from there. Let's move to another interesting non-conference showdown. Rockland was playing Hagerman, and again, Will, Hagerman's quarterback, Wyatt Mavenkamp, had been injured the week prior against North Gem. I'm not sure if he played in this game or not, but the fact that Rockland won didn't surprise me. But again, it was the margin, a 48-12 victory.
Yeah, and I'm the same, because Hagerman had played well coming in, and Rockland had frankly not played as well as I think most people thought they were capable of. But they certainly played well in this game, and I still think they're probably positioned to be the team to beat coming out of the eastern side of the state in 1A Division II. And part of it is just because of that 6'5" unicorn they got under center. Teague Matthews can do a lot of things that teams at that level are just going to have a hard time defending. And if they can get on a roll, they're going to be a tough matchup for a lot of teams.
297 yards, 7 touchdowns passing for Teague Matthews, 123 yards rushing, and on defense, 9 tackles and an interception. Just another day at the office. What does that do for a team, Coach Kirkland, having a 6'5" guy like Teague Matthews? You just don't see a lot of those in the 8-man game.
I was going to say typical 8-man guy doing everything, both sides of the ball. But hopefully every team's got one of those, and Teague is a great competitor. I've seen him run in track, and he's just an amazing, good-looking kid and a nice kid. Definitely caught fire this last week and did a lot of things for his team, and that's what Rockland needs, is a good leader to pick up the pieces there and rally through the conference and keep it going or get it going.
The best basketball play I've seen since I've moved to Idaho involved Teague Matthews and his brother Wes Matthews. They were playing together. They were playing Clark County. This was like 2 years ago, I think, and they were playing up in Du Bois, and they got out on a fast break, and Wes threw up an alley-oop to Teague, and he just two-hand jammed it and brought the house down. It was pretty cool to see.
It's wild. You think about it. Teague Matthews is a kid that won the state player of the year in basketball a couple years ago, and he wants to be a football player. And, it's not very often you're going to have D1 scouts we talked about with Justice Schrader, but this is a guy, Teague Matthews, who's got Division I teams, Boise State, Idaho State, Weber State, he's Eastern Washington. He's got those kinds of programs looking at him, and that doesn't happen often. So, I really hope the people over there in Rockland are, they're savoring their time watching this kid play, because he's a special athlete.
Yeah. If Idaho State doesn't get Rockland, that's right in their backyard. Something's gonna miss there. So Rockland gets their first win of the year. They're 1-2. Hagerman drops to 2-1. Castleford was back in action playing Garden Valley. Well, this is a game that you were at. You were just kind of taken in the action.
Yep.
Garden Valley wins this one 45-18. Welcome back to Tacoma Kelly. He was up to his usual tricks. He scored on offense. He returned a fumble and an interception for touchdowns on defense, if I saw the film correctly.
You did.
Garden Valley runs away with this.
Yeah, they did, and it's also one of those games like Coach Kirkland was talking about earlier, that the final scores may be a little bit deceptive. The white hat, the head referee, was saying to me on the sideline at one point that every time it feels like Garden Valley's about ready to run away with this thing, Castleford would make a play and kind of close that gap a little bit. But in the end, Castleford just ran out of bullets in against Garden Valley. Garden Valley, you mentioned, was able to get a couple defensive scores. Caden Zimmer, their all-state wide receiver, left it in the first half with an injury. So in the second half, I thought a great adjustment by Garden Valley. They have a couple of big gentlemen in Trustin Brown and Trevor Korn, and they just said, okay, we're just going to get behind the pads and we're just going to hammer on this Castleford team a little bit and see if we can wear them down, because Castleford, as we've talked about a number of times on this podcast, this is a young team. They have some good seniors in Jaime Ramos and Cash Keach and Crash Taylor. They've got some really talented seniors, but they've got somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 freshmen on their roster, and some of those kids are playing heavy minutes, and you lean on them and eventually they kind of wear down a little bit. And I think that's what happened. And Coach Kirkland, I know that Castleford's going to be back on the schedule for you guys starting next year. And I know you pay very close attention to them in the junior high, so you know what's coming. They've got some dudes that are coming. They really do. This is kind of that transition year, but Garden Valley's good. Castleford has some good players coming.
They do, and we played their junior high yesterday and had to come back down 12 and won by 2 at the end of the game. There were some good eighth graders to come fill in that program to supplement those seniors that go away after the end of this year. But that's a hard fighting freshman crew, and that's a pretty decent score against the Garden Valley squad. I just want to know, was that awesome announcer at Garden Valley? Was he still calling the shots there? That guy, he's always entertaining. He makes the game fun. He gives those guys nicknames. I remember some guy named Hurricane Heilman. He just made it fun. Yeah.
True story. And I won't put anybody's names on this, but you mentioned the public address announcer up there in Garden Valley, who does a fantastic job. There was a play where Garden Valley was running an option, and they pitched it, and the pitch hit the ground, and Castleford recovered it, and then a flag came out, and everybody's all kind of quiet, and the referee says, "We've got an illegal forward pass. That penalty is declined. Call on the field stands, first down Castleford." And so everybody kind of looks around a little bit and goes, well, if it was an illegal forward pass, and then all of a sudden you hear this booming voice over the microphone, "That was a forward pass. It can't be a fumble," or something to that effect. And all of a sudden I'm just like, yep, there it is. There it is. There's the guy. And the referees, like Coach Yearsley said something, and you immediately saw the officials go, whoa, wait a minute. Yeah, we goofed it up, and they fixed it, and they got it right. But he got on the microphone. It was like the voice of God telling everyone in Garden Valley, no, that is not a fumble. That is an incomplete pass.
Yeah, we should have an award out there from Idaho Sports that gives it an award to the best announcer. I think he might get that one. He gets my vote.
There's a guy down, well, no longer, unfortunately, he's passed away, but Horseshoe Bend had a guy like that. It was just your little old farmer guy that lived for Friday night to grab that microphone, and it was like you were watching a TV broadcast. He'd be like, there's a handoff to Johnson. Did you know his dad took some cows over to sale the other day, and he made a great sale on that. I mean, he talked through the whole game, and if you weren't entertained, you don't have a pulse. And they've now named that little press box area after him. And games aren't quite the same there. They do a good job, but you're right. A good PA announcer can make a game a lot of fun.
Nice. We can call it the Golden Pipes Award. What do you think?
There you go. Make it happen, Brandon. You're the man.
Let's go.
All right, I'll workshop it. I'll run it up the flagpole, see what we can come up with. Will, real quick, you did mention the two linemen up front, Trustin Brown and Trevor Korn. I did like at the end of the game, Coach Yearsley rewarding his big fellas with a little goal line action. Each of them got a rushing touchdown late in the game as well. So I did think that was pretty cool. And you had
in the backfield a lot in the second half, and they're both, Korn's a 220-pound kid, and then Brown's 6'2", 6'3", 200 pounds. And man, that's a lot of size and strength running downhill at you. And it took its toll on Castleford in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and you had a great story too about Timo, the Garden Valley kicker. And if you want to read that story, you can check out this week's 8-man 3-star awards column that Will wrote. It's right on top of the homepage at IdahoSports.com. Can't reveal everything on the podcast, right? So
no.
Go check that out. That was a great job by Will conveying that story there. Okay, so Camas County loses. Hagerman loses. Castleford loses. Dietrich wins. Okay, somebody in the conference got to win. Dietrich beats Mackey 46-8. Connor Perkins, 4 touchdowns rushing, 1 touchdown passing. Brody Torgerson was active on offense and defense as usual. Dietrich now 2-1. You know, they lost that first game of the year to Garden Valley, and we all thought, oh boy, what's going on in Dietrich? But Coach, Blue Devils seem to be rocking and rolling.
Yeah, I think Coach Estelle and crew have found themselves and are calling some good games and improving and getting better and getting used to those new kids and those new spots. And I know that Dietrich's always been very disciplined and making sure their kids know what their assignments are and doing better each week and improving and demanding that perfection and improvement each week. And I think they're still containers to watch out for. Yeah, it's the only win out of the Sawtooth Conference last week. That's where it starts, and I think those other teams will have chances as they come along throughout the rest of the season.
So, Will, I wanted to ask, you know, in terms of the conference in general, we're used to seeing the Sawtooth Conference kind of be the preeminent conference in 1A D2 football, with last year, you know, Castleford and Dietrich and Cary, you know, when they were in the league not that long ago. And I'm wondering if statewide the conference as a whole has slipped a little, because we're seeing, you know, these Sawtooth teams dropping these non-conference games to teams from the Rocky Mountain Conference in District 5 and 6, or the Long Pin Conference over in District 3, or the Whitepine up north in District 2. So in terms of a conference overall, are they still the big dog at the table, or have these other conferences caught up a little bit?
I mean, I think the other conferences might have caught up a little bit, and I also think it depends on how you measure it. If you want to play 1 versus 1, 2 versus 2, and on down the line, you know, I'll still take the Sawtooth over, you know, just about everybody. You know, you're looking at a team like, let's say, I mean, I think Camas County is probably going to be the one. I think there's a pretty good chance Dietrich winds up the 2. And then at that point, I think you got Castleford looking at a potential 3, but Hagerman nipping at their heels. You guys have seen enough of Hagerman to know if they're your 4 seed and they're playing the number 4 seed out of, say, Eastern Idaho, and maybe that's Water Springs, you know, maybe that's Mackey, you know, who do you give the advantage to? I think I still lean Sawtooth a little bit. Time will tell, and we'll see. And there's obviously, that's like, you know, who's the greatest basketball player of all time? There's no way to know, because you can't actually play it out that way. But I still like the depth of the conference as a whole. I just think, like last year, I think you had, I mean, arguably 3 of the 5 best 1A Division II teams in the state, period, in that league. You know, you had Kendrick, and then you had the Sawtooth, basically. I don't know if that's the case this year, but I still think it's a pretty good conference.
What do you think, Coach, about where the Sawtooth stands as a league as a whole compared to the rest of the state?
I agree with Will on that quite a bit. I know some of those programs have lost a lot of kids. Dietrich lost a lot of seniors, but they're still winning. Castleford lost a big load off of their group there, and they'll come back around to maybe down just a little bit, but still playing above. And consistency in coaching staffs, I think, plays into that as well to help those guys continue to win. So.
Yeah. So the early reports of the Sawtooth Conference's demise may have been exaggerated. We'll see as the season goes along. But speaking of the Long Pin Conference from District 3, 2 games I wanted to touch on quickly here. Council shuts out Horseshoe Bend 44-0. Will, I feel like we haven't talked about Council enough. We've talked about Horseshoe Bend a lot. We've talked about Garden Valley a lot. Council just kind of quietly doing their thing. A 44-0 shutout, though, pretty impressive.
Yeah, if you can quietly shut out a team 44-0, I'm really impressed. That's another one, and I feel like we say this quite a bit on this podcast. Am I surprised Council won the game? No, not really. Am I surprised they won it 44-0? And I've watched Horseshoe Bend with my own eyes. I think that's a pretty good football team, and Council just, manhandled them basically, and that's a really good win for a team that is looking like they're kind of they're trending the right way in terms of their play. And Owen Hatfield, the quarterback, and Dalton Brigham, the running back, they've got some nice pieces there. And that's a team that I expect to be playing in November. That's a team that I expect to potentially make some noise, and we'll just have to wait and see how much. But you're right, it's the Lumberjacks. Sometimes we don't talk about them as much as we probably should, but I think that they're a really good team.
And I'll tell you, watching them on film, the fullback, Mason Roberts, man, he really stood out to me. He had 2 rushing touchdowns, great lead blocker. What does a good fullback do for your offense, Coach?
Oh, anytime you get a big hit or a great big block or run over somebody, your team just elevates another level. And that's always fun to hand that ball off and just watch the guy go do something amazing. And they're unstoppable.
Yeah, and Council's got enough balance too. They completed a lot of deep passes against Horseshoe Bend as well. So I think Council's a very dangerous team that's lurking. Tri-Valley we haven't talked about a lot this year either, Will. We send out a preview form to every coach around the state. Coach Kirkland used to have to fill those out. You don't have to do that anymore, which is probably nice for you. But we also ask every coach to kind of give us their preseason coaches poll. Hey, how do you think the conference is going to shake out? Or we ask them, what's a team in your conference that could surprise people this year? And we got a lot of response from coaches that said, Tri-Valley, watch out for Tri-Valley. They've got a new coach in Tyler Wagoner, and they beat Salmon River 50-6. This was an impressive win.
And this was one that, depending on where you checked, I saw 3 different scores for this game. So I wasn't sure for a while who won the game or what the score was. And there was one outlet that had it reported as a Salmon River win, and I'm like, whoa, that's a big win for Salmon River, because I think Tri-Valley is pretty good. And the thing that they have more than anything is, man, they're fast. They are a fast football team, and it's quite the reversal of fortune. I remember several years ago, Butte County went in there for a playoff game against Tri-Valley, and Tri-Valley just had a bunch of big old plow mules, and it was just a mud fest. And I remember the reports afterwards saying the weather played right into Tri-Valley's hands because the field conditions were so bad that it just negated anyone's speed. Well, now that coin is fully flipped, with Clayton Harper and the rest of the gang up there in the Titans uniforms. If they get that corner, man, that's got to be a nightmare, Coach. You see that guy start to turn that corner and realize that there's no help out there, and okay, kick return, get ready to go.
Yeah, you better have them close sometimes. Tri-Valley's got some great tradition, over the years, when back in the days in the 90s, and when they're the Cambridge crew, and all those close communities, and not too long ago, 2017, Tri-Valley going to the state championship against us. There's some pride still left in that program, and some good things there, and a community that really rallies around them. And there is some dangerous speed left on that field, and you can't compensate for speed. You just better spread them wide and hope for the best.
Yeah, Clayton Harper, he's about 6'2", I'm guessing, 6'2", 6'3", maybe. And did he win the 100 at the 1A state track meet this past spring?
Yep.
Right.
I think he did. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's a wide receiver for Tri-Valley, and they pretty much throw it up to him, and he'll go get it. Gage Warren is the running back. He did a phenomenal job, and they've got a freshman quarterback, Jace Wagoner, and I'll tell you, he sure doesn't play like a freshman. He looks in command of this offense and looks really poised and great under pressure. And so, yeah, Tri-Valley 1-0 in long pin play, 2-1 overall. We're definitely keeping an eye on the Titans. Let's preview quickly some of the noteworthy games coming up this week. Gentlemen, we've got 4 8-man games on IdahoSports.com this Friday night. How great is that?
Yeah, hard to pick which one to watch.
Well, let's start with a non-conference game that we're going to be broadcasting on IdahoSports.com. It's a 6 o'clock kickoff. It's an hour earlier than usual, 6 o'clock Mountain Time. So Grace can get home a little earlier, but Grace is making the long trip across to Notice, Will. So Grace is 3-1. Notice is 2-0. They haven't played as many games, but this is kind of a measuring stick game, right? Grace got all the way to the championship last year. Notice we think is still going to win District 3. So another measuring stick game for the Pirates.
Yeah, I think they're both solid teams, and I think we're going to learn a lot about both teams either way, win or lose. If Grace is able to come over here and author a strong win, I think that's going to speak really well of Grace, because I think Notice is a quality football team. And the inverse is also true. I think Notice coming out of District 3 probably has a little more to prove psychologically, because the perception around the state is that the Western Idaho Conference here in District 3 is down, it's soft, it's weak, pick your adjective, whether it's fair or not. I think that's the perception. So I think any time for Notice that they have a chance to go beat a Clearwater Valley or to beat a Grace, I think that's an opportunity that those kids are going to really latch onto and try to take advantage of.
What do you think of this matchup, Coach, between Grace and Notice?
I think it's a great matchup, and it's always fun to see. There's been a lot more of these, it seems like, in recent years, of cross-state matchups early in the season, picking up these extra games against quality teams and quality programs. And it's going to help both teams. Like Will said, either team come out of this, they're going to learn something about themselves. And we'll see if Grace can travel on the road and play at a tough Notice field. That's a good program there. And we'll find out a whole bunch about both teams here when this game plays out.
Do you think that we're seeing more of these, heavyweight matchups because of the Max Preps rankings, and you get rewarded for playing a more difficult schedule?
I think so. But I think also teams are interested in good matchups. There's a lot of blowouts in 8-man football, and those are boring. They're tough to coach. It's more player management than anything, and you don't grow from those things. But the Max Preps in that D1 division definitely is going to play into that, and will help either team rank a little higher.
Yeah. So Grace at Notice, 6 o'clock Mountain Time, Friday night on IdahoSports.com. Also Friday night on IdahoSports.com, a D1 versus D2 matchup. Council will be hosting Camas. So here's Council 2-1, trying to defend their home field. And now here comes Camas, kind of licking their wounds a little bit after losing to Logos last week. They check in at 1-1. This is an interesting non-conference matchup as well.
It's really interesting in that you're looking at a Camas team that wants to bounce back and a Council team that has a good offensive line going up against what I think might be the best 1A Division I player in the state of Idaho in Porter Whipple. And they got to contain a great defensive lineman that all he does is go out and make 13 tackles and 3 sacks in every stinking game. And the Council offensive front is going to have to account for him, and they're going to have to do their best to control him. Otherwise, if Whipple runs wild and he's making a lot of noise on defense, it's going to be tough for Council to win that game. They really need to at least have a stalemate at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, this is going to be a big time matchup for Camas, making the long trip south to see if they can come through with a road win. A third 8-man game on IdahoSports.com. Like this game even needs an introduction, Coach. It's the Hatfields and the McCoys. It is Oakley at Raft River. How do you think this matchup goes?
Well, I'm sure Raft River's hoping they can fire that cannon a half a dozen times and shockwave the Oakley Hornet sideline. I think Oakley has the upper hand coming into this game, but I know that Raft River will give their best and have a good game plan. Chad Evans always has a good game plan going into those games, and will know how to manage the clock and the ball, and we'll see what happens in Trojanville.
The last time Raft River beat Oakley was 2 years ago. I was there calling it on IdahoSports.com. It was a very low-scoring game. And I think since then, Oakley has kind of tilted the rivalry back in their favor. But that's our third of 4 8-man games on IdahoSports.com this weekend. The last one we've got is up here, guys. I'm going to be at Lakeside hosting Clark Fork. These are two of the teams that are battling in this North Star League. It's going to be at the Merriman Health Center. It's a brand new facility that was built by the Coeur d'Alene tribe up here. It's a turf field. It's a really cool deal for the communities of Plummer and Worley. So I'll be in Worley Friday night for Clark Fork and Lakeside on the turf. How about some 8-man football on the turf, Coach? What do you think?
Hey, nothing better than that. It should be fast. I love the turf. Oh, yeah, maybe we'll get one of those 80 to 60 games up there.
I can only hope, Will. What do you think about this matchup? First time Lakeside and Clark Fork are going to see each other.
Well, ever since you said you were going to be there, and it's in Plummer, there's a Zips there. And if you've never eaten at a Zips, you're missing the best that God has to offer in terms of food. So after the game, you need to go in there. If you haven't ever done it, you need to go into that Zips, get some dinner. You will not regret it. Two underrated playmakers: Chase San Roman for Clark Fork, Quincy Hall for Lakeside. I think this is going to be a show. I think this is going to be back and forth, up and down. I don't know about 80 to 60, but I could see like a 48-40 type game here, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I've never been to Zips, so I've added it to my list of things to do on Friday.
Coach, next time you go north, there's a Zips right across from the Kibbe Dome. So next time Carrie's up there for a playoff game or a state game or something, you've got your marching orders. Go into Zips, and this is an unpaid endorsement. I'm not I don't have a name, image, and likeness deal with Zips or anything, but I'd take one if they were willing to offer.
Zips. All right. We'll check that one.
Yes.
All right. One final non-IdahoSports.com game I wanted to preview quickly, guys, is Rockland at Castleford. I feel like everybody from District 4 is playing Rockland this year. And so Rockland's kind of like an unofficial member of the conference after losing to Dietrich in a close game and then beating Hagerman last week. How do they fare against the Wolves, Coach? What do you think?
It should be a good matchup. Seems like Rockland's on a roll there, and Castleford's a little wounded. I think both teams are going to be hungry and out to prove something. I think Castleford's going to go in there feeling like they got a good chance, and Rockland's going to go not today. Oh, it should be a good matchup.
Well, what do you think about this one? Rockland at Castleford.
When you're talking about matchups and you talk about, the unicorn Teague Matthews, Castleford might have an athlete who's able to compete with him a little bit. Not that he's 6'5" and, attracting college interest to play football, but Cash Keach, watching him up in Garden Valley last week, number 11, he's over here making a tackle. He's over there making a tackle. He's getting pressure on the quarterback. And, if they're able to in any way limit the damage that Matthews is able to do, I think they've got a really good chance to get the win in this game. And I think Cash Keach is going to be the central figure to that. If he plays well, I think the Wolves have a good chance to get the win.
Yeah, it's going to be another great slate of 8-man football across the state this weekend. And again, 4 games on IdahoSports.com. Grace and Notice, Kamei and Council, Oakley and Raft River, and Clark Fork and Lakeside. So no excuses to not get your film study in, gentlemen, this week on IdahoSports.com.
Correct.
You're going to be
you to send out notes after your game.
Yes, I will give you a detailed scouting report on what I saw. Coach, you going to have like 4 screens going at one time? You going to quad box it?
Yeah, I'll have to borrow my kids' phones, and while I watch us play Lighthouse, and we'll just get it all going there and see what happens.
I like it.
8-man overload for sure. Well, thanks for tuning in, everybody, to another edition of the Idaho 8-man Prepcast. For Will Henneke and Coach Lane Kirkland, I'm Brandon Bainey. Enjoy the games this weekend, everybody, and we'll see you next time on IdahoSports.com.